Okay, so Pete Carlson. Are you Pete Carlson?
I am Pete Carlson.
Here we go. Watch your nose.
Okay.
Okay. So I have the honor of interviewing Pete Carlson today. And Pete, do I have your permission to take this video?
Yes, you do.
All right. And Pete, where were you born?
I was born in Albany, California. That's in Northern California, next to Berkeley, where I was actually raised in Berkeley. But Albany was a little small town where the hospital was, so that's where I was born. And
your mother was Beverly?
Beverly Carlson, yep. She raised me with my dad, Helger, that's my dad. And they actually grew up in the same neighborhood where I got to grow up. So it's a real small world, cozy world, and that we all grew up in right there in West Berkeley, if you will. And it was a really fun place to grow up. The schoolyard was across the street, so I was sort of spoiled. I could go over and just jump the fence, and we played ball every day almost, with the kids in the neighborhood, and you got to know a lot of kids. So it was a real friendly atmosphere, and the school was nice. We had great teachers. And I think we were actually one of the lucky groups because they started to change the school systems in Berkeley's Unified School District to a more integrated school system. So the kids from the hills and the kids from the flats all started to mingle more. So you saw a lot of interesting things take place there, and but you got to learn and meet a lot of new friends. So it was a great place to grow up.
How did you get interested in, well, I'm going to ask you about the golf shop, but where did your interest in golf begin?
Well, I would say as a kid, we primarily played baseball because that was the sport of preference, and we had the schoolyard across the street, so we always had a ball game going on, even if it was just 2 people or 4 or 6 or 8. And so around maybe 10 years old, I just started to watch TV and started to get interested in watching what the golf pros were doing on these golf matches that they would televise. And if you want to hear something really silly, but it was fun, I never was on a golf course, and I don't think I remember even seeing one, but watching on TV, you could see a real golf match, right, in person. So I would simulate what they were doing on the carpet in the house. I put a little drink saucer under the edge of the rug, took a long pencil and a marble, and I would hit the marble towards the little saucer, and that was my golf hole. So I started playing golf on the carpet in the house, watching TV.
How old were you then?
About 10. And then we probably got interested through miniature golf. They had one over in North Oakland, so we went over there and we'd play miniature golf, and that was kind of fun. And then when I was about 13, my parents were building a mountain cabin, and there was a 9-hole golf course up there. And so I fell in love with it, and I was just, left to my disposal. I could play freely as much as I wanted, during the summers. And my dad had a couple friends who took me out to golf then, and then it just sort of replaced baseball. Golf just was a natural transition, and I played it all through high school and even into junior college.
Did they have a golf team in high school? We
had a golf team. Another thing that was really very influential was I knew some of the older kids who played golf, and they were much more experienced. They had been playing for a few years ahead of me. And so I got to be friendly with some of them and got to hang out with them and play with them. They were probably seniors and I was a freshman, so that was about the age difference. But just incredibly, they were all shooting like par golf as juniors and seniors in high school. So I said, well, this has got to be something pretty good to learn from a lot of these really good players, and it sort of rubbed off, and I started to develop my game and got better as I got to become a senior in high school. And our teams were never too good, but I think I took second place on a big match, so that was kind of an accomplishment for me, and had some close friends that played, and so we were always playing when we had time to go up after school And it was up in the Berkeley Hills, up at Tilden Park, so it was a great place to go. You know, the trees were there and the greenery and the deer running around. It's a fantastic regional park, so it was awful nice.
I'm going to ask you, what was the equipment like then compared to the equipment now?
You know, being a novice sort of in that respect, I didn't know a lot about equipment, but we just had the enthusiasm and to want to play that we really didn't get too over concerned about the equipment, but it was sort of the you know, the clubs were made of wood in those days, and the irons were much more I guess handmade in a sense, or things they hadn't the golf designs of clubs had not developed that far along then, so they were a little cruder the way they were built, but it didn't keep anybody back from wanting to play and actually could play good golf. And the professionals used those kind of clubs back then, so I would say their skill level was really high to be able to play with equipment that would be considered kind of inferior to today's equipment. So but all in all, it really didn't matter because we just had the enthusiasm to want to play all the time, and so that was the most important thing to us. Wherever we could go play, we were ready to go.
I'm thinking that, do you have an old set that you had, like from the beginning or anything?
You know, I see a lot of clubs come through that people use from that era who are desert people, and they're giving them away because they've had them in their garage and maybe collected them and they don't use them, so they bring them here and we give them to junior golf. I see a lot of those kind of clubs, and it brings back a lot of memories, you know, from probably the 60s was the time when we were starting out in golf. And you know, I was given a set of clubs, my first set, from a friend, and then when I went to buy a set, I think I paid maybe $50 for the irons, you know, for a set of irons.
It says that you came here to work at Don Sherwood's golf and tennis shop.
Yes.
Was that in Oakland or here?
He started out, just real quick background, he was a golf pro from Spokane, Washington. He came to the Bay Area and worked for Palo Alto Hills Country Club under Ken Venturi, who became a prominent golf pro as in a sportscaster, as everybody knows from later on. And he was an assistant pro and then inherited Ken's job when he went on the pro tour. And so then he went from Palo Alto to Oakland, and a new course was being built. He bidded for the contract, he got the job, and he became the first pro there. It was called Lou Galbraith Golf Course, 1966. And so he was one of the first guys to really start to do what you would say in today's terms mass merchandising for a golf pro. Because essentially in the earlier days you could only buy professional equipment from pro shops, but he started to kind of break that barrier. So he went from the golf course and then he went to San Francisco and opened a store, which allowed him, because he had a pro background and a golf course, it enabled him to sell professional equipment off of a golf course setting in it, like in a storefront. So that's where he got established and did real well. And then once his contract ran out with the golf course, where I broke in with him, 1976, his contract ran out in 1980, and he came to the desert, and he asked if I'd want to come and run the store, and that's how I got here in 1980. And
so originally it was called Don Sherwood's, or did you buy that from him, or did you just...
No, I worked for him, so a total of 5 years, one down here in the desert, and then he moved the store up to Rancho Mirage, and then I decided it was my best interest to break away, and then found a small little vacant building.
Right here?
Yeah, right here. It was just a few doors down. And then just started up from scratch. And I kind of had a leg up because I was here for 1 year already, and people kind of remembered me when they came back, you know, every season and saw me. And I had a lot of, you know, contacts with the manufacturer reps, so they helped me, you know, get merchandise and get started up. So it was a very small, humble start, you know, when we first got going, and we had some challenges, you know, at the beginning, and then this little by little the store just took off, and we kind of just grew it step by step. And as you can probably see today, we've knocked out several walls to expand to where we are. And I was just counting how many businesses were here in this whole vicinity, and there were 10 other businesses, believe it or not, that actually inhabited all the space that we use now for the store.
So conveniently, you took over when they exited.
Yeah, they would either retire or move, or just the situation worked out, so we were able to keep expanding, little by little.
Did you start here in 1976? Where did you start?
I worked in Oakland. That's where I broke into the golf business at the golf course, and then did 4 years there, and then came down here, and then started here. I did 1 year for Don Sherwood's, and then the next year started up under Pete Carlson's. I think we called it Palm Desert Golf and Tennis the first year, and then we changed the name to Pete Carlson's Golf and Tennis.
Now, was it more tennis then, or was it?
No, my background is golf, really. So we, it was predominantly golf, but we quickly integrated tennis rackets and tennis shoes into the store, and we knew that would be a good mix because so many people play both sports, and most of the facilities have both golf and tennis. So that helped draw more people to us too. So that was really good.
I like it, the humble part, but I'm sure people are interested to know if any super well-known golf people have been through here.
We have seen, yes, a number of players. What was really nice in the early days was, if you recall, the Vintage Club was built the same year we started in business, 1981, and to attract homeowners to purchase homes there, they started a senior golf tournament there, pro tournament, and they held it there, I think, for 7 or 8 years, and that helped get a lot of exposure for the Vintage Club. And through those years, a lot of the golf pros would come in, and we met them. Trying to remember all the names, gosh, a wide mix of golfers. Maybe not always the most household name or most famous people, but like Roberto Di Vincenzo was an Argentine pro. Actually, he had more international wins than any other golfer at one time, and he's famously known wherefore, unfortunately, he signed the wrong scorecard and he lost the Masters in a mistake. So he came in, and Bob Golby, who got the victory, he used to come in. We met Chichi Rodriguez, who was a colorful golf pro. Jim Dent was a long ball hitting pro. He was the longest hitter, I know. Of course, Arnie was around. I don't think he came in the store ever, but we met, a number of golf pros. What was nice was that as the years went along, the manufacturers would sometimes provide a spokesperson for their company, and they'd come to a store or signing. So we got to have them come in, and they represented, TaylorMade or Callaway.
Okay.
Yeah, like Rory Sabatini came in for TaylorMade, and we had John Daly come in because he was a real colorful guy.
Was it like a trunk show or kind of a thing?
Yeah, well, he had his own line of goods, like head covers and different accessories. So, and he was in the spotlight a lot in those days because he was sort of colorful kind of a guy. He was a little bit a nonconformist in a way, and so he came in a couple different times and did signings, and we had a lot of fun. And our friend the Hammer, who lives here in the desert, he came in the same time, Fred Williamson, and they had a kick. They were just cutting up with everybody, would come by and see him and talk with him and just enjoy the whole outing. And so we had some fun there. But I do remember a couple interesting days when some celebrities came in, and these were kind of really unexpected. Like one day, the famous basketball player Bill Russell came in, who played for the Boston Celtics, with the owner of the Utah Jazz, and he started Sam Battistone. Sam owned a chain of sports stores, and they sold like memorabilia and professional jerseys and things. They came in together, and that was fun. And I remember Tony Curtis came in one day. He was just down here, and it's because in the older days I would be in here by myself, and so I would notice real easily who it was, And then one day Jerry Lewis and Marcus Allen came in together. So they were hanging out. So, we, through the years, Jerry Rice came in one day. He needed a pair of shoes for the Bob Hope tournament. So, you never knew who you're going to run into. And so we had a lot of great people. And the LPGA women, their pros would come in for the Nabisco. And, we saw a lot of them. Patty Sheehan was over not too long ago. She won the tournament. And, I remember a couple other famous football guys that came in. Don Meredith, Dandy Don. He used to do Monday Night Football. He played for the Cowboys. And Gail Sayers, who played for the Chicago Bears, he came in and bought some clubs. And Ray Nitschke, who played for the Green Bay Packers, he was a tough guy. And he came in, and he was like a teddy bear when we got to talking with him, So a lot of fun, memorable days with a lot of these sports figures. Luckily, in those days, you saw more people, I think, because the Bob Hope kind of spread around the valley more, where it was held at different golf courses. And then the Dinah Shore brought a lot of people over, and again we'd have lady pros show and do signings. Annika Storenstam, she came in, and a number of the top ladies came over from the LPGA. So it was a lot of fun. We had some good times. So the public really loved it too.
I noticed that your store is very full. I mean, so I know you're a generous person, so tell me about that. It's probably the most full store I've been in the desert, where you have plenty of stuff, let me just say. How does that?
It's a little, probably a little more than we would need at this time of year, but in the last 2-3 years, deliveries of merchandise has been a little tough at times. And so I think we were very eager to get things in to have them for people, because people are used to having a lot of selection. And so I think that's why it looks pretty full right now, a little more than maybe we'd normally have. But, like they said, there's an old saying, you can't sell out of an empty wagon, but you could go overboard on that too. So I think we're really well equipped for another big season to happen. And
Absolutely.
So we have year-round customers. The summertime is not as many, but it goes by, and then pretty soon people are coming back, and it's October, and they're coming back into town, and we're ready, for the people to come back, and I think they know our store, being here so long. They're kind of used to seeing a lot of inventory and merchandise. So, but you're right, we get comments. They said they haven't seen so much before. So, I think the COVID thing kind of really altered the way business had been for 2 or 3 years, and it's sort of getting back to the way it used to be, hopefully. So. We're optimistic.
Did you close during COVID?
We didn't. The first summer, it was very kind of shaky because we didn't really know what's the right protocol, how to do things. So we just had people come to the door, and we would get them things, bring it to them. So everybody was being careful,
Because people were playing golf,
Yeah, they were getting a lot of golf in. Yeah, it was, what was a lot of demand for were carry bags and pull carts, because they couldn't use their motorized carts so much at the club, but they could freely walk and carry their own bags. So that became a big thing.
Interesting.
And a lot of new golfers were getting into the game, so they were buying, starter sets and those kind of things. So we saw a big increase that first summer, and then little by little it kind of got back. The Canadians couldn't come down for a couple years, pretty much. So that kind of changed a little bit of the volume. But now it seems like they're coming back over okay, and don't have as many restrictions put on them.
You like comedy?
Yeah.
How could you? Yeah.
Oh, I know. I mean, I think.
So tell me about that.
Well, let's see. Where does it start? It probably starts as a kid, right? So you see funny things, and it's always TV, because we were born in the TV age, as well, in the 50s, especially, I think I was too young to know Milton Berle, but I know he was Mr. TV, so to speak. And then you see a lot of these funny guys come along through the years. Bob Hope did his thing for years, and Jack Benny did his thing for years. The Marx Brothers. I was a nut for the Three Stooges because they were just slapstick funny, and then you'd watch, they'd have comedy on the mornings, on the weekend. Red Skelton would be on, and some of these little more obscure comedians you don't hear much about, the Ritz Brothers and Spanky and our gang, Leo Gorsey, I think, the Bowery Boys. They were kind of silly and playful as kids. But
did they have comedy here in the desert or not? Did they have where you could go see comedy?
There was the Laugh Stop in Palm Springs. I really didn't make it there, but I know they had live comedians there. Yeah, I knew the guy that owned it, and he owned the club, and then he was kind of a singer himself, and he's still kicking around the desert. I haven't seen him in a few years, but that's really the place that I know of. But I will say there was another club that didn't really feature comedy, but we saw Red Fox there. So that was pretty good.
Where was that?
Yeah, it was in Palm Springs at a I don't even know if the place is there anymore. It was sort of a restaurant club, and they advertised him, and it was pretty funny. Yeah, to see him in person, and that's uncensored when he's doing live material, in front of the public. But anyway, I could go on with that. You watch Ed Sullivan, and you see all those famous guys, and people who were unusual, different kind of comedians. Jonathan Winters comes to mind. He was a genius, and of course Robin Williams came after him and sort of was influenced. But there was a guy before that, Jackie Leonard, who was kind of like Jonathan Winters, real. And then Henny Youngman, another one, had the violin going.
Oh yeah.
There's so many that were just classic, incredible people. I'll tell you one guy we wanted to get to come here and play. We saw him on a jazz cruise when my wife and I got married. We went to a jazz dinner. They have an annual dinner in Los Angeles at the Sheraton, and one of our friends was being honored, Frank Capp. He was a big band drummer. He had the big, kind of like a Count Basie big band, and it was fantastic. And a couple other people were honored, George Duke and Mary Stallings, and they all got to get up and play a couple numbers. And then they had an auction after the sit-down dinner, and so there was one prize went up, and one person raised their hand, and it was a piano. He bought the piano. There was no competition. First guy, he got the piano. Second one was a jazz cruise. So I said to my wife, wow, wouldn't that be something if we could do that? And so 3, us and 2 others started the bidding, and then the bidding started going up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then this one person dropped out, and then the bidding kept going up, and I said, uh-oh, what do we get ourselves into? So after so much more, the head auctioneer, he said, time out. We're going to give you a cruise. We're going to give you a cruise.
Oh.
So we got to go on the cruise, and it was phenomenal. 7 days of jazz and being on the ocean, the Caribbean, and we just loved it. And that's the only time we ever did that. But we saw one of our comedians who was on the boat, and he was on the Tonight Show many times, Pete Barbuti, a classic comedian. Great piano player. He could just be a pianist. He could do that. He wouldn't have to do comedy, but comedy is his thing, and he kind of does it together. So he plays the piano with his nose. He does. He smokes a cigar, and he does smoke rings in the air, and he's got a microphone. He's got props. He's always using little props. How he's doing his comedy, and then the band kind of they try to kind of cut in on him, like when he's telling a joke, and he looks at him. He's got these expressions. And so he was on the boat, and so he picks on people in the audience, kind of like Don Rickles does, right? But he's kind of harmless. He's not offensive.
Right.
But Sudi said, "Where are you from?" Palm Springs. Oh, Palm Springs. I heard it gets hot. Does it get hot over there? Anyway, we had a lot of fun, and we wanted to get him to play here sometime and perform. And we didn't, but he's on the list of a great talented guy. He lives in Vegas. I don't know if he's even performing anymore. He's getting up there in age.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun to encounter that.
How did you decide to get into the jazz here?
Well, I was a jazz lover starting right at the end of high school. I took a class, and the teacher played the records, and then you just started listening to these phenomenal tunes. He'd handpick the really good choices, and so that was about a time when really jazz was just sailing upward, And so it really caught my eye. I sort of, as a kid, because my mom loved music, she had classical music on in the house, so she was a big influence. She played piano and cello and violin. I never really played the instruments at all. We had a piano, and I would just bang on it and run out the door. That was about all I'd ever do. So when we got to that time period, for my graduation, high school, my parents gave me a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And in those days, you could go buy blank reels, and there were stores up in Berkeley on Telegraph Avenue, used bookstores and record sections, and they let you rent the records, take them home. I'd put on so many on a reel, take them back, do it again, and just started making a collection. So I just fell in love with it. But I'd listened to a lot of the other kind of music, of course, as a kid. I mean, I was big on folk music when I was real young, because that was real popular in the early '60s. Remember Hootenanny? That was a TV show. And the New Christie Minstrels, I liked them. I just thought they were great. I saw them in person a couple times. The Limelighters, they were from Berkeley. Glenn Yarborough, he had a great voice, and they so there were always the Kingston Trio, and in the Bay Area, San Francisco was famous for it had that culture, blues, jazz, folk, classical, everything, So
I know I'm representing people when I say, are you going to start having jazz here again?
I sure wish we would.
It's too much work.
It's a lot of undertaking.
Yeah.
But we've been going through this transition of the business. So the business kind of comes first, and
right.
And it enabled us to do those concerts because we could just convert our store to a venue almost overnight, quickly, and wouldn't have to go outside and rent a place and do a lot of extra expense. So that saved us a lot. But it was a lot of effort, a lot of energy it takes, a lot to put it together.
How many people could you seat in here?
We had up to 150 people at a time, so it was a real, it was well attended. We would average 75 to 100 people, as a rule. So it would go about 3/4 back to, with the chairs, and it sounded good. The acoustics were good. We still have a beautiful piano in the room there, and it hasn't been played, and so we want to, hopefully at some point get it back out there and get it used.
Yeah.
But all these musicians are knocking on the door. They all want to play.
They are?
They have been, yeah. I mean, because they that's their livelihood, a lot of them, and so they're looking for places where they can, continue to do their craft and and play. So it's still in the process.
Yeah.
Still in the process.
Was there would you say there was an actual jazz scene here at one time?
Well, there's jazz musicians that live around here, that play here, and I'd say in the earlier days, I think people, it's before my generation, but the people that lived here maybe in the 50s probably got to see some very well-known, performers come here, like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, people from that time frame, and I think they all made a stop through here. And I know there was another local sax player who always got a lot of attention, Pat Rizzo. He played sax, and I think he played with Sinatra, and of course Sinatra was down here, and they used to get out there and sometimes perform. So I think there was a little bigger jazz particular scene in the earlier days. And there's always been a few musicians around town who are playing, or did play or want to play, and so but again, it's time starts to catch up, and there's some younger kids coming up, that like the music and they play it. The band leader at Palm Desert High, Guy Lake, he's got a nice group of kids that he's been developing, and they perform.
Yes?
Yeah, they performed for us.
Really?
We were working with I still am with a nonprofit group, American Jazz Institute, and
I know that, over on Johnny Drive over there.
Yeah. The radio station's
the
there.
radio
It's
station.
still on the air. It's 24 hours, non-commercial. It's
I know it.
and so but we found that it's hard to maintain it, and just by donations, contributions, and so we took the FM off, and now it's internet only. So
Oh, I was wondering.
yeah, so you don't hear it on the FM, but internet you can hear it. And Alan Schultz, he's the general manager. He programs the music, and he does a really nice job. He worked at the Monterey Jazz Festival. He's been in jazz 50 plus years himself. He's a real, walking encyclopedia of music, knowing the jazz music. And so be hanging out with him. And then Mark Masters was the fellow who really started the American Jazz Institute. He got it going in Pasadena and Claremont College up there for years, and brought it down here and got the station opened up. We did some concerts, and we've collaborated on some things. He's brought his groups in, and they're really good, and he's a real creative arranger. To get back to some live music, I know the high school could be a good transition, maybe venue for us to maybe get the live music back going, and so that way it might not interrupt what we're doing here,
right?
And it'll
right. You can't stop your work.
And then I think they would be receptive to it too, because they have had a couple concerts there with both the kids and the professionals, and they've done clinics and workshops. So it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I hope we can get back on that, and for this upcoming season.
Tell me about you have a spiritual practice.
Yes.
And what is that, please?
Well, I'll say mid to late 80s, I was introduced to a Buddhist teaching in the Bay Area, San Francisco actually, and it originates in Japan. It's still there. That's the home origin, and it's grown, terrifically from that base. And it's a lay practitioner teaching, so anybody can practice, and you can be not interrupt your own faith, in other words. So it welcomes people, and it embraces people, and it's a doing teaching. It's a doing practice, I guess you could say. It involves using everything you pretty much have, your knowledge, your reading. We do reciting, chanting. You experienced it the other day a little bit, and so it's a really incredible exposure to, for me, like a universal practice that I can carry on my whole life, and a lot of people feel that way. There's probably roughly a million practitioners worldwide. It comes from Tachikawa, Japan. It's called Shinyo-en, and it's a lay practitioner teaching. And the great part about it is that the foundation is rooted in the historical Buddhism, from Shakyamuni Buddha back when he lived. So it's like a culmination of all the teachings he gave, sort of presented in a modern, contemporary way that people today can practice and capture and retain the essence of what the teachings were. So I've been doing that for over 30 years.
What is it how has your life been enhanced by doing that practice?
It's like really the teaching is to stay awake and stay in the moment. Try to be mindful of what you're doing all the time, and have a heart for people, a good heart, and be compassionate, show kindness to people. And that's, I think I was brought up with that same thing. My mom took us to Sunday school when I was little, and then when I got to be a teenager, I sort of like, okay, well, I don't think I'm going to go to church anymore. So for the next probably 20 years, I was, maybe just keeping my eyes and ears open. And I think that's what they say in the teaching, is that you try to, we all have an antenna, and we want the antenna to kind of be up there as a receptor to catch, what's going on around us, to be cognizant of, staying on track, staying on a good path, keeping a balance. So, the basic teaching is, middle path, not to involve yourself in extremes too much. So I think it's been that helpful reminder, and on a daily basis to keep keep myself centered as much as possible, and exhibit that through my actions, through my daily practices, because you're
I like
always
how you mentioned joyous action.
yeah, that's right, because really that was the essence of Buddha's teaching, was to live in joy, and not be brought down, burdened down by sufferings, and so a lot of times we bring it on ourselves. It's the human tendencies, to be me first rather than somebody else first. So that lesson right there will probably rid a lot of anxieties and problems people have, just by being thoughtful that way more, and try to maintain that, because sometimes you get so interested in things that it starts to pull you a little bit more, and then you kind of lose track of that. Oh well, that's good. I want to be committed, and I want to be have integrity, and be do all the right things, be responsible and accepting. So I guess those are all qualities you want to to have in your life, and to live your life by. And so I think that's helped me a lot in that way.
You and Edna.
Yeah, Edna. Yes, she has a very strong, good background. She was in the Catholic Church most of her upbringing, and it really helped her deal with her growing up days a lot. I think she had more challenges than I did, because she grew up in Mexico. I grew up in the Bay Area. So, but she learned how to be real, she sort of really developed herself through that, and knew, how to navigate through life, so to speak, without a lot of help. But I think that her faith has helped her tremendously, and then she's passed it on a lot to other people. And that's what we try to do, too, with practicing, share it with people. I guess that's really how all faiths have continued to exist. They get passed down, they get shared, so, and through family, friends, and then connections are made, and people can kind of be together more, as we say, in oneness. And so I guess that's our direction we should stay on, and we get a lot of help from the home office.
Where is that? Orange County?
Well, that's our Orange County location, and then we have a Redwood City headquarters. But I was even thinking of the main home headquarters in Japan, because the founder lives up till about 1989. His wife, she passed away maybe 20 years before him, but they were very forward-thinking people, and they had more of a worldly view about Buddhism that maybe had a lot of difficulty being transmitted. So they were all about want to see people be able to benefit and learn and practice in their own language, their own culture, wherever they live. It's not always try to adapt to necessarily the way where it originated, but it's got its roots there. And if you go back even to 2,000 some years to to Buddha's time, I mean, he was from Nepal, and he was so the language was Pali, and then Sanskrit was written. So all these things had to be kind of translated down, right, and to finally get to us in English, and so that's the great thing, that so much effort's been made, and so that's why we get a lot of support from the home office. And
how do you apply that in your life? For example, you're in the now, but you're somewhat planning for the future at the same time. Is that how?
Yeah. Well, I think if you're doing your practice right, you're kind of like doing good things all the time that concern others and that include others, and you could say you're like building merit. So the merit is what is the good thing that you can distribute to people around. If it's just being nice, just being kind, considerate, and thoughtful, compassionate, and but in many different ways, different degrees. But that's really the idea. Is even maybe one might not think like this, or thought about it this way, but even when the world is a lot of anxiety and conflict and suffering, it's up to the people to purify it or make it better, make it nicer, or so that's why they always say, you mentioned joyous action or joyous world. That's right where we are sitting, right where we live, where we are all the time. So if we're in that state, we can just manifest that, in a lot of different ways. So if it's your thoughts, it's your words, it's your actions, you can get good results. I mean, the old teaching is cause and effect. Good cause, good effect, and that's the old rule, really. That really goes through the thread of all teachings, all faiths. So it's interesting because the founder of Shinyo-en, Master Shinjo, we call him Shinjo Ito. He studied a lot, and he studied all the religions, and he wanted to know about every religion. And so he said, yeah, because you take the things you like about each faith and each teacher, and you can utilize that. It's for your benefit. They're teaching you something, so be receptive, and grasp it. Maybe absorb it and use it for a good purpose.
What is your plan for going forward with your store?
Well, we've been here since, as you know, 40 plus years, and it's not a real definite plan other than just take it a year at a time. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can maintain the way it's going good, and possibly groom some people who might want to continue it. We've had long time employees, a few who like working here and being here, and so they're a possibility. And Edna has her son, family, that maybe they'd like to be interested in it. So her son's raising 3 kids, so he's got his hands full right now. So I don't know how that might look, but down the road. And I'm trying to maintain good health. I think that's so important.
You seem very healthy. So.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to utilize all those things that are around us that are that kind of, like I made a mention to you, to age gracefully, or like we say, we want to keep aging chronologically but be youthful biologically. Right. Yeah, so like an 80-year-old to be like a 40-year-old, in an 80-year-old body, right? I agree. And it's possible. It's being done. People are doing it. Yeah, and because they've learned about how to do things that are going to help them. Mm-hmm. And I guess, like a lot of people say, do something that you love to do. And so,
do you think that this area is good for maintaining youth?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's I think people can be just kind of be part of this habitat that we live in. The beautiful weather, year round, and the environment's clean, and I mean it's a pretty well preserved area, and even though it's growing, like we say, and yet it's got a lot of pluses. Yeah, I think so. Because I think I hear so many people, they say they love coming here and they want to stay here for periods of time, and then then they go back to the city and it's hustle and bustle and traffic, and after a while they they want to find a more peaceful, serene place where they can kind of relax more. And it's kind of funny because people ask me too. They say, are you going to retire sometime? I say, well, this isn't that stressful of a lifestyle or a job. I mean, you are busy, you're working, you're exerting yourself, but you're having fun doing it, and people are enjoying. They enjoy this atmosphere, the recreation. And to be part of it is pretty, lucky, pretty special. So.
I hope you don't mind if I ask you this, but this is my last question. Then,
sure.
How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I think I just like to say that I was, a person that enjoyed other people, and tried to do things for other people, and kind of let my own individual personality come out. There's a saying, I guess it says, to be generous to others and be strict with yourself. That's kind of a training, you know, in a sense. But yet, if you think about it, not to worry about yourself so much, because you know you're working, and you know it's like they say, don't worry about the results, just put your effort in, and you know the results come. So I guess that's it. I just, you know, I applied that to this life, you know, this lifestyle, and just tried to give it a good effort every day, and good results came out, and you know, tried to live happily and healthily as long as I could. So I'm not putting a limit on it.